Hello, this is CMIYC of MacCaching. This video demonstration is a discussion on the difference between simple and Smart Cachelists, which are features in the MacCaching software. MacCaching is a geocache manager for Mac OS X users. What is the difference between a simple and a Smart Cachelist? Well, a simple cachelist is a way to drag and drop caches manually into specific groups. Every time a file is added to MacCaching, a simple cache list is created for that file. That way, if you add a pocket query or a cache you download from geocaching.com, it's very simple to quickly send it to your GPS or look through it to see what's new. A Smart Cachelist, on the other hand, is a sophisticated type of filter. It's very simple to set up. One thing to keep in mind is that Smart Cachelists are much like Smart Playlist you will find in Apple's iTunes. To begin, we need to import a pocket query into MacCaching. So I just so happen to have one in my mail, so I'll bring that up. And if I look through here, there's the pocket query in a zip format. I'm just going to drag and drop that into MacCaching, and I can see that there is a dark border there. Close mail while this imports. These happen to be some caches around the Northwest Indiana area. And so let's take a look at what we've got. So if you see over on the left, there are two different simple cache lists that have been created. And the way you can tell the difference is that simple cache lists have a bluish icon and Smart Cachelists have a purplish icon. So the first simple cache list are the actual caches that were found in the pocket query, which were about 100. The other cache list is a list of parking coordinates for those caches. So I'm going to rename this one by right-clicking on it and going to rename cache list. And I'm going to type in parking coordinates. The other list of caches are this is the actual caches, so I'm going to rename this one, and again I'm going to right-click. If you don't have a 2-button mouse, you can also press the Control key and right-click your mouse to go to cache list, rename cache list. I'm going to rename this one Indiana Caches. And in fact, I'm going to right-click on that again and rename it to Northwest Indiana Caches. So if I look through this cache list, I can see that there are a variety of different types of caches. So for example, there are traditional caches, unknown, and I think even multi-caches. So let me go back to this unknown for a moment. It turns out that when you do a pocket query, puzzle caches will typically show up as unknown instead of puzzle. So just a tip to keep in mind. Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to single out or group only the multi-caches together. So one way I could do that is I could have created a cache list over here, a new cache list, drag and dropped a cache onto it, and then I'd have some cache inside of this new cache list. The problem with this is that if I delete my caches or if I add new ones, then I have to manually drag and drop those again. So instead, let's set up a Smart Cachelist to do that. The way we start is by going to the File menu and selecting New Smart Cachelist. This will bring up the Smart Cachelist editor. The way that this editor works is there are a list of fields over here on the left that you can choose from. And within those fields, you can search for virtually anything, which is filled out in this field over here. So for example, I want the type to be multi-cache. And then I can say OK. And I'm going to come over here and right-click to rename this to multi-caches. And it looks like in this pocket query I just loaded, there are 3 different multi-caches. Okay? And just like with any of the simple cache lists, a Smart Cachelist can be exported or sent to a GPS device. So for example, I can go into File, Export, and any of the export options are available to the multi-caches, including the new iPod Notes export. So I'm not going to export for right now. I'm going to cancel out of that and go back to my library of caches, all the caches in the list. It's pretty obvious just by looking at this that most of these are traditional caches. So let's set up, go to File, New Smart Cachelist, and do a type of traditional cache. Say OK to that. So in my new Smart Cachelist, these are only traditional caches, and it looks like there are about 90 traditional caches. And if I just kind of go through here real quick, that's all I see. Now what I'm noticing is that it turns out that this pocket query had some caches that are already found in it. Well, I'm not really interested in having those sent to my GPS, so I'm going to modify this Smart Cache List to not include found. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to right-click, Edit Smart Cache List. I'm going to add another branch. I'm going to change the status is not found. And then say OK. Now my status shows that there's a bunch of not found caches. However, it turns out there are some caches in here that say owner. New to MacCaching 1.2 is the ability to add a owner tag, or to set the status to owner. And the way we do that is if you go into the preferences, MacCaching preferences, under home coordinates, you can add in a geocaching name. And so I don't actually own any caches, so I had to borrow my brother's geocaching name, Guinness FC, so that I could show some caches here that I quote own. So I'm going to say OK. Now if you just happen to have a library already existing, or you want to change your owner name, you can change it in preferences and then go to tools and reset owner data. And this will give you the option to reset the owner tag for all the caches that are placed by or owned by Guinness FC. What I'd like to do is change my query one more time to get rid of these owner tags. So I'm going to go back over here, right-click, Edit Smart Cache List, and instead of is not, I'll say is not found. And there we can see now I only have not found caches. So to summarize, Smart Cache Lists are an automated way to filter out specific things about specific caches. Anytime I add caches to my library, these Smart Cache Lists will get updated. When you export or send to a GPS, they're treated just like a simple cache list. Thank you for joining us on this video demonstration today. If you have any questions, feel free to visit forums.maccaching.com.